Sit back, relax, and strap it down. White Sox baseball coming your way.
Hey, how's everyone doing out there? Welcome to a Word Media presentation of Major League A-Hole Sox Type Thing. I'm Pete.
I'm Ryan. This is Sox Type Thing, the third episode. We are available at Sox Type Thing on Twitter and SoxTypeThing.com. Jam-packed episode 3. I mean, you have breaking news you want to get to. We have Palooza. We have Box Seat Manager. We have, what else do we have? Jesus. I mean,
we have Wrath of Han. We've got another poll question, which even more people participated in this time.
Thank you.
I'm loving it.
The tweet bag is full.
The tweet bag is full. Did we say Wrath of Han? We got Wrath of Han. We'd be remiss if we didn't recap a little bit of Sunday Night Baseball. What a freaking disaster that was on multiple levels.
Some shit you couldn't make up.
Some shit we couldn't make up.
I'm going to sprinkle in and ask. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Shit we couldn't make up, which is really part of news over the last few days. So
I'm going to sprinkle in an asshole question at some point.
Look at that guy.
By the way, Pete is on the road. If you're watching the video version of this, you can see he's in a strange confines. You're on vacation, but taking time for the podcast. So we appreciate that. So
I'm on vacation.
We might have some internet issues. I think we're talking over each other a little bit. So we'll try to work through that as we go, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah, sorry about that. We usually do. We've practiced and gotten to a good rhythm of not doing that to one another. I think I'm just so excited for this jam-packed episode, and I'm all relaxed and well-rested because I've been on vacation, not working. So I'm like fired up.
Nice.
Had a giant Starbucks just a little while ago.
Oh, that's what's going on. Now I see. Fully caffeinated.
I totally forgot to mention in my intro that, of course, this is still presented and sponsored by Revolution Brewing.
That's right. I forgot as well.
Can't forget that. They just approved some T-shirts that we're thinking of producing for some giveaways for you listeners. It has been approved by Revolution as of yesterday.
Wow.
My friend over there and partner, Mr. Smitty, did some really cool designs. So
I thought you were talking about Revolution Brewing.
No. And they loved them. So
nice.
We will be proceeding with that at some point. So stay tuned.
Well,
stay tuned, folks.
Yeah, that's some news to me, and that's news to everybody. So
that's breaking news to you.
We'll get you some more details as we progress with that idea. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and jump into your breaking news.
Holy crap! I mean, with I guess just the injuries, which will be covered off in Wrath of Han. Just got the best of the White Sox, so they are doing something I didn't really expect. I expected it later in the year, but Lennon Sosa, who Han commented about a month ago that he and Yolbert Sanchez would probably both see some time on the White Sox this season. He's jumping from Double-A Birmingham all the way up to the big league roster today. This news has been reported by Jeff Cohen from FutureSox.com. He's down in that area, I believe, but it's been reported on CBS Sports and some other legitimate outlets. So, I mean, it all started to come out last night because he didn't play in the game, but also like Gavin Sheets was a late scratch from the Charlotte game last night. So I entered this with a little bit of skepticism, but maybe they're both being called up because in a little later, we'll hear about the latest MASH unit injuries, courtesy of possibly the Wrath of Han, which is gaining more steam as this season rolls out. But just to give you an idea of Lennon Sosa.
This is Sammy Sosa's grandson, correct?
Is he?
I don't know. It's just making.
I don't know. He's not.
The irony of the name, though, is unbelievable.
Yeah, the irony of the name is crazy. But he's got a 933 OPS with 14 homers and 48 RBIs right now for Double-A Birmingham. So the Sox are just gonna say, yeah, you don't need to stop at Charlotte. Why don't you just come on up and test it out in the big leagues? We've seen this before with a lot of players. I mean, later on when we're in the hole, exciting news on the Detroit side of things is Riley Green, who was only hiccuped because of injury this year. So,
I'll
players,
get into that. Don't you worry.
Yeah, it's exciting
Different
stuff
show
over there.
Different
show though, but same division. So so that looks like Lennon Sosa. I don't know who else is getting called up, because there's like fucking 3 injuries that may have long-term effects, and then leg soreness and all this other stuff, and it all happened yesterday. So.
Yeah.
But we'll be getting to that in a little bit. What we were going to jump into next was early shit we couldn't make up here. And it's from the Toronto game a couple nights ago, but yesterday it lingered as hitting coach Guillermo Martinez walked out with the lineup card before the game and got into it with the umpires due to what was the gentleman's name from the night before?
Doug Eddings. Guillermo Martinez apparently had some issues with Doug Eddings. Strike zone 2 nights ago that the whole world had some issues with.
God.
Blue Jays hitting coach Guillermo Martinez uncharacteristically brought out the lineup card the next morning to the umpires, including Doug Eddings, and I got the uncharacteristically from Toronto's broadcast. They said that was not the standard procedure for them, but he took that opportunity to hand the lineup card and apparently have some choice words for Doug Eddings, because he was immediately ejected before the game even started. When everyone was at a commercial break and they came back, and it wasn't even Doug Eddings that ejected him. It was probably the crew chief that day, or whoever it was, but threw him out of the game before the game even started. So that gets us into the incredibly horrific performance of one Doug Edding on, what was that, Tuesday night?
Yeah, Tuesday night. He had a liberal strike zone.
Yes, I would say liberal, meaning he missed 29 strike calls, which I don't know if that's a record. You've been following ump scorecard for quite some time, so
it's right at the top. I
would think,
because I did not do my due diligence and research like some of the, because Angel Hernandez is like
up there,
right in there in the 20s too. He's had like 20 plus missed calls. I think the reason the Blue Jays are most upset that, and I would be too, is according to scorecard, it gave the Sox a +2
runs in one game.
Yeah, +2 runs in one game, which it was already like a back and forth, and
I mean they won by 1 run in extra innings, so that those 2 runs were rather critical.
Exactly.
To give some context, at least 2 runs is outrageous. I don't know if I've ever seen that on scorecard. Typically, a pretty big disparity is like 0.4 runs or 0.6 maybe. I don't know how.
Yeah,
I've even seen one run.
There has been one, like when I've complained on my personal Twitter account.
Oh, you have complained now.
I said at the Veneries complained, that whiny bastard, but not Sox type thing.
That's a little Twitter spat.
It has. I thought that was a funny way to reply back to you. But yeah, I mean, it's been in the +1.5 and stuff. But I think 2 might be a new record. Here's where it gets all weird for me. And I don't disagree with everyone being upset, but it's so muddied. I heard Jason Benetti a few weeks ago, and there wasn't a good way to fit this in, but now I'm glad this has come up to fit this in. Jason Benetti said on a White Sox broadcast that the box we see on the screen is representative of the strikes that have been called on the hitter for their last 100 at bats.
Oh, okay.
So that leads to a bigger issue in that.
Now that's how NBC Sports Chicago does it. Is that what he's saying?
Well, he's saying that's pitch tracks. So
okay. Well,
I
and we don't
it's
know what the different broadcasters
Yeah.
are actually using, if they're using pitch tracks or what.
Yeah. So if you're using pitch tracks, it's represented. So that means Doug Eddings' strike zone will come into play on balls that were called strikes on a pitch tracks broadcast. That would come into play
Yeah, those
as
would
a
be
strike zone for the person. So
it
that's
would be
something that
with 100 at bats. Is that what they said?
the last 100 at bats.
So there'd be 4. If you had 4, well, depending, not 4, but how many? 29 calls. So there's probably, I don't know how many at bats were affected. Maybe let's say 10 at bats were affected. So that'd be 10% of that 100 are affected by Doug Eddings' calls. So
yeah, right. So I mean, it was clear, like without seeing a box on a lot of those calls, that they were way off the plate. But my question, my thing, why and I think probably because I've already exhausted Sport Card on my @Veneri Twitter account, is at this point, like, I agree. I think it was horrendous, and I think it cited towards the White Sox. So that's what all that data proves. But at the end of the day, what are we looking at? The umps are being judged against something completely different.
We learned that from Joe West, our anti-hero of the week.
Right. And so until we until we get to that auto call, which would be like representative of the strike zone based on what should be the batter's height from his chest to his knee, it's exhausting. It's just exhausting.
You're bringing up good points, and those are all valid. I guess the takeaway from this specific incident is, and what's cool about scorecards is they're judging it the same way every time. What if they're using pitch tracks or another system or whatever? I know it's being influenced by Doug Eddings and other bad calls. But scorecard is a consistent use of the same data, whatever data they are using. So they're essentially they're comparing it to other games. So when we're talking about the plus 2 runs, that was definitely an outlier. And those, we all know he was calling a terrible strike zone. What scorecard does is tell you, well, he was terrible for everybody. But he was more terrible in an effective way, or a disaffected way for the Blue Jays, or against the Blue Jays. So it's relative. It's you are right. We're getting into other issues that we have gotten into before with consistency, with the technology and other things. But for this, at least this one ridiculous incident, I think we could maybe ignore some of the other issues with the automated strike zone or pitch tracking in general. But it was universally derided. The idea that the pitching coach would purposely get thrown out, purposely deliver the scorecard to get his piece in the next day is just some serious shit.
I mean, that a word I like to use a lot when it comes to baseball and judging people, that is an indictment on Doug Eddings.
Yeah.
that he wanted a guy who's fairly low key, he couldn't take it. He had to walk out the scorecard to say his piece. I mean, I mean, that sends it all. And
there's some theories about Doug Eddings' performance. Like, that was a very hot, humid evening in Chicago.
Was
he trying to get out of there sooner than the dinner reservations joke? Because I was there. Was he trying to get out of the heat? It was too much. Was he feeling like the effects of the heat? Was his vision blurred? Was he dizzy? I mean, it's just bizarre when you see the tracking, especially the way scorecards actually visualizes the bad calls. It's literally like you have double vision.
I mean, for like 2 to 3 inch like punch outs. I mean, I haven't seen calls like that since the Braves won the World Series.
Yeah, exactly. Mid-90s Braves got the benefit of that.
No love for the Cleveland Indians, but they didn't have a prayer in that series when Glavin's throwing 3 inchers off the outside corner and people are getting rung up like nobody's business. I mean, Jesus. So yeah, I think this year with the technology that's out there and everything we've seen, and all the different graphics, and no matter what system anyone's using, I mean, if we're not in an automated strike zone situation next season, I mean,
there is some news about that because the minor leagues have a kind of a hybrid modified system of that, or at least some of the leagues at one level are. They're doing a challenge system. Have you heard about this?
Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah.
Where the umpire still has the same ball strikes call responsibilities, but the managers can actually challenge. I think it's being experimented like 3 pitches per game or something like that. And so far it sounds pretty promising how it's worked, because it only takes 10 seconds to review that call, whether it's a strike, and then they move on. And that could drastically affect things going forward. It seems like kind of a clean, at least on the surface. I haven't watched enough minor league games to see how smooth the process really is, but it's on the surface, it seems like a pretty cool compromise to maybe ease us into that, where umpires are still the majority of the control at home plate, but when there's an egregious error, there's empowerment given to the managers to actually step in and say, no, you fucked that up completely. Let's, and this is too important to fuck up. Let's fix this now. So that might be.
They would have needed about what, 5 each, 6 each.
Well,
in this last game.
That's what's good about it, limiting the number of times you can. I mean, it's bad that he could fuck things up that badly, but maybe it's even a training tool at the time. It's like, well, you fucked that one up. He learns on the fly. Oh, that was way off. The next pitch has to be closer. So maybe that's a way for, maybe it's like it's an umpire shot collar almost. Like it just.
No, you're right. I didn't even think about that angle of it. That is like, it's like, okay, I can course correct this now.
Yeah. It's like an invisible fence for your dog. So maybe that'll help. I don't know. It just popped into my head.
I love we'll call it the invisible fence.
I like the umpire shot collar.
I do too. One fan of each team should get one. Get access to it for a game. Buzzer. And you've been upgraded to the ump shot collar seats for this game.
Now we're getting somewhere. That I like that.
Yeah.
Best Sox podcast. Whoever has the best Sox podcast gets the buzzer that day. So we're gonna bump up these. We can bump up these numbers.
Oh crap! All right. Well, moving on. What would a Sox broadcast be without a La Russa Palooza segment? And he's at it again. I'm referring to Tony's big book of analytics, which probably hasn't been updated since the mid '90s. Because
it's dusty. Like he dusts it off every so often, but when it doesn't fit his agenda, he doesn't open it, or whatever explanation he's coming up with kind of works.
Because what he looks at, I don't know. I don't know. And I'm gonna talk about 2 things in particular, both in this Toronto series. Most recently was the extra innings game that the Sox ended up winning, but why? The left side, in fact, the infield as a whole for Toronto is one of the most solid infields in baseball. But on the left side in particular, maybe Matt Chapman's not hitting the ball, but he is a fantastic defensive third baseman.
Yep.
Put Bo Bichette next to him, who is an incredible shortstop too.
Former Lugnut.
You've got runners on the corners, no out. So it's not like, you're trying to force a situation, have someone make a mistake with a couple outs in the area. Why is the contact play on with both of those guys on the left side of the infield? The chances of Danny Mendick, we're not talking even like Lewis Robert is at third, who has incredible wheels. Danny Mendick has probably average, maybe slightly above average speed, but he's not a burner. You don't even have a burner at third. They run the contact play with no outs.
Who was batting?
Mendick, I think Robert was batting actually at that point. Mendick gets thrown out at home. So now we got 1 out, runners on first and second. We end up not scoring a run that inning. Yeah. And it's just questionable. Like, you've got above average defensive people in these positions. why is that play even on? Why? Because Mendick at third with one out. Now we've got a chance still to have a deep fly ball score a run. Like you've just removed all that situation completely.
Yeah.
To me, it was just terrible managing.
Well, in the grand scheme of things, this is probably less of a circus than what we've experienced in the last few weeks with La Russa, the La Russa Palooza, as we like to call it. But because of all this other shit, everything he does now has to be scrutinized. He doesn't get the benefit of the doubt anymore.
No, I'm not giving him the benefit of the doubt on that.
Yeah, I think that's where we're at. Where if there's something questionable like that, you're not going to buy his explanation, because his explanations, as you pointed out, don't make any sense. Sometimes it's analytics, sometimes it's his gut. Sometimes
that's got to be his gut.
Yeah, well, every time he has no idea why anyone would ever question one of his decisions, no matter what.
Was that even a question?
Yeah.
Are you? What are we talking about here?
I've got some new imaging for our intro to the La Russa Palooza. I pulled that quote. So
yeah, the new intro you sent me is awesome. Follow up. Let's get to the game I was at, which will work for a perfect transition into.
That's right. We had some Pete at the park,
or into Pete at the park and box seat manager. Joe Kelly is back, and for some reason, Tony decided to use Kendall Graveman in the eighth, even though Kendall Graveman saved 10 games for Seattle like a year ago, and then brought Joe Kelly in as a closer. Now let's get to Tony's big book of analytics, which should have told him that Joe Kelly is 1-4 with a 4.78 ERA in save situations. That includes 14 home runs allowed.
Ooh,
well, it would have been 13 until that game, which he has 14 now, because a 3-run lead turned into a 2-run lead. Thankfully, Kelly got out of it. But again, why? I mean, they're both right-handers, so it's not a matchup thing. Like, why do you like Kendall Graveman in the 8th inning there? The guy who has better experience, better numbers as a closer, versus Joe Kelly, who in save situations has not performed well. I mean, he's 1-4 with 6 saves in it was 82 games in save situations. That's not good. So again, what are we looking at here? Maybe, I didn't go back and look at the 4 batters he ended up facing. Maybe his numbers, specifically against those guys were better and Graveman's were better. But again, we all know, and White Sox fans experienced it last year. You got closer mentality is a lot different, and closers can't be hold guys, and hold guys can't be closers sometimes. So why even put yourself in that situation? I would say Kelly in the 8th, Graveman in the 9th until, Hendricks is back. So again, everything to your point now, you just got to question, because I can look up these numbers. If I can look up these numbers on the internet, why aren't the White Sox looking at these numbers in the dugouts before these decisions are being made? And there's got to be.
Where's Ethan Katz?
Where are they? Right, exactly.
A lot of people have asked that question. How much voice? How much is he able to even communicate with TLR? Is this a one-way communication? Is there collaboration? You'd think, you'd think someone like Ethan Katz, I'm guessing, is more of a new school type person with the access to and the embracement of analytics. Is that just falling on deaf ears? There's no way to know that, or one way or the other. But it just seems like that's a likely thing, that TLR just puts up the hand and say, "Shut the fuck up! I know what I'm doing. My ample gut will tell me what needs to happen here."
Yeah, it's like they talk before the game, and he's like, "Well, today I like Graven in the 8th and Kelly in the 9th, and it's a done deal."
Seems like
Maybe
that could be it.
Yeah. So that's the game I was at.
That was Monday night.
Monday night. That was Monday night. Another steamy night at the ballpark. I mean, I should have broke out. I really should have broke out the basketball jersey for that game. It was that hot out there. But
let the pits fly.
But I will tell you, in front of me, someone was wearing the basketball jersey. So
that would have been awkward.
You do, yeah. Dressed the same at a baseball game. You're wearing the same thing as me. But it was I moved to 5-1 on the year, which is incredible for a team that's loves to play baseball at 1 game below or 2 games below 500 all year. So moved to 5-1. I think I've seen now most of the starting rotation. I've been there for a win. That includes old members of the starting rotation, Vince Velasquez and Dallas Keuchel. So that alone should get me free season tickets for the White Sox. That I saw them have 2 shutout innings. Total of, I've seen Vince Velasquez, and if you combine Vince Velasquez and Dallas Keuchel, I've seen them pitch a total of 13 2/3 shutout innings. Who else has?
Well,
no one.
I think you might need to go to a Lucas Giolito start at some point to help him out, because that actually leads me into an impromptu asshole question for this week.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you're mentioning your former starting pitchers in your rotation. But with your current setup of 5 starters, would you consider Giolito your worst starter? I mean, my question was going to be, would he make your playoff rotation? Considering most playoff staffs have 4 starters.
Yeah.
But I'm getting ahead of myself because we're far away from the playoffs. And if the playoffs started today, the White Sox would not be in the playoffs. So I wanted to frame that question a little bit differently, in that, is he your 5th best starter right now? Giolito's,
he is the 5th best. Yeah.
I mean, he's got a 5.40 ERA right now with a 156 whip. He's actually at a negative 0.2 WAR, which, he's over a 10 WAR player in 5 years in the league now. So that is uncharacteristic.
He's got a 9 ERA in June.
Yeah.
Before June, his ERA was 2.63. So June has gotten him to 5.4. So yeah, I was going to talk about Giolito today anyway.
Yeah.
So I agree. Your assessment's correct. I don't think if the White Sox were in the playoffs and the playoffs started today, that he'd be on the outside looking in.
I mean, you got
which is crazy when you think about that. Because
you'd start with Cease, then Kopech, assuming his innings were managed properly throughout the season, so he's available in the playoffs.
Big assumption.
Yeah. Lance Lynn, and then Johnny Cueto is
outperforming. Yeah, Johnny Cueto, who's 7 innings of shutout ball the other night.
Yeah.
In Houston. I mean, unbelievable.
He might be your most reliable pitcher right now, Cueto. So I think Giolito would be on the outside looking in, but I wanted to get your thoughts on it and just kind of, you seem prepared for it, but
because I wanted to talk about some things with Giolito that I did touch upon last week, because his barrel rate is through the roof right now and stuff like that. And there's a couple different things. One, he's lost a little bit of velocity since coming back from COVID. He's lost velocity on his fastball.
I heard 1 mile an hour, but that sounds minimal, but that could be a lot.
No, it's huge. It's huge. And part of some of what they were talking about, and it was Steve Stone talking about on the broadcast a couple games ago, was that if you don't have enough of a variation between a fastball and a changeup from speed purposes,
sure.
If you're in between, it won't really matter all that much.
Both pitches are affected.
Yeah, both pitches are affected. Giolito, in a lot of cases, was able to ramp his fastball all the way up to 97 miles an hour, to get that strikeout. A rising fastball at 97 miles an hour coming off an 84 mile an hour fastball. changeup, excuse me, thank you, would cause some problems. There's a 13-mile-an-hour difference.
Yeah.
If you're in between, it doesn't matter. Either
Right.
pitch, you look ridiculous. But I do think Giolito's, because I dug into it, and I want to, MLB Baseball Savant is the greatest site for getting to information, like the things you don't see or the things you have questions about. And I think Giolito is right in that he is having a mechanical problem, and here's why.
And I've heard him say this on interviews that he does not feel right. And this was, I think, last weekend on maybe Inside the Clubhouse on 670 The Score.
Mm-hmm.
So he's on record as saying his mechanics aren't right, and he knows it, but clearly he's not able to fix it. But what did you learn?
Well, here's what I learned, and here's the disturbing trend, or the difference between now and like last year and the years before. So his slider in the past has a negative 2.5 dip, a movement.
Oh,
so
inches?
Okay. Yeah, inches. So a slider's a pitch you throw to a spot, but it doesn't end up there. So and one of the things that the effectiveness of his slider, his changeup, and his fastball are working together is that they all come out of the same arm slot.
That's tunneling.
Yes.
Pitching Ninja, if you've ever seen that, illustrates those perfectly.
His slider right now is flat. It's 0.4 on the positive end, basically flat. So all he's doing is throwing a meatball for everyone to hit. So between the beginning of the year and now, it's moved to flat. So wow. That pitch is completely ineffective.
So just like with the fastball and the changeup, those are mitigated because the speeds are similar, and then throwing the slider that's supposed to be moving, and it doesn't even do that. So it's almost like a third pitch that is doing the same thing as the other two, which means you don't have to. You can sit on whatever you want. Boy.
Yeah, even the movement on his fastball, which he throws a rising fastball. Okay, if you lose half an inch on that, those end up in the middle of the plate to be fucking destroyed. And that's what's happened. He was 1.8. Now he's 1.2. And to me, all of that, those are mechanical problems. It's release point issues. But my struggle with this is when he had issues before his before the 2018 season, when he was the worst pitcher in baseball, or was it the 2018 season?
2018, where he has over 6 ERA.
Yeah. He went to Ethan Katz to get right. Well, Ethan Katz is there right now.
Yeah.
Like,
well, in the next 3 years, it worked because the next 3 years, his ERA was like 3.5. So suddenly it's back over 5. So
well, why can't he get him right? You're like, what is it?
And you think a mechanical thing would be the easiest to fix.
Yeah.
That's a grip.
Yeah, because
that's lots of different things with mechanics, but
so
that they can't identify or solve it is disturbing.
It's super disturbing. Like, I would have thought over the last 5 starts, which have been horrendous, that it would have been fixed by now. And he has these innings where he looks like he's corrected it, and he gets on like cruise control for a little bit. It's like 2 and 3 for sure, and then 4 it starts to get sketchy again. And by the 5th, he's out of the game because he's just throwing meatballs. And yesterday was Bo Bichette just crushing a ball for a grand salami, which is great for my fantasy team, but not good as a White Sox fan. So, I don't know what to say. I don't think he's washed up, but I think like there should be more than enough video evidence. You've got the mastermind behind his mechanics there.
Right.
Why? I mean, it's obviously whatever Ethan Katz, whatever voodoo he's done for Johnny Cueto, it's like a reclamation project. I mean, it's crazy. So, and I don't know what to say, but I agree with you. Like, I'm with you. He's not on the playoff roster. if they make the playoffs. He's not in the rotation at this point in time. Do I believe we could see a dramatic shift and things could get back to normal? Yeah, because it definitely looks like, from what the data shows, it's a mechanical problem, not a arm problem. Mm. So, and that was part of my initial concern last week, because I didn't dive into all this, was that it was an arm problem. Like, he was just losing velocity, but also mechanics can cause velocity issues too.
Sure.
So, yeah. So,
well, I got much more than I bargained for this asshole question. Very in-depth analysis. Nicely done.
I was already ready to talk about it. Then I was sitting here thinking, when you said you had an asshole this week, I'm like, I bet it's about Giolito after yesterday's performance.
Yeah. We've been doing this podcast for too long. 3 full episodes. We know exactly what each other are thinking.
I wore this Giolito no-hitter T-shirt just for this, to reminisce of the great times of Lucas. Nice. But of course, a visit to the ballpark would not be complete without our new segment, Box Seat Manager, which, of course, is more like Box Seat General Manager this week, because this isn't so much about coaching on the field, managing on the field at the time. It was more about what should the White Sox be doing with their player personnel. And there were some doozies from this gentleman behind me. So first off, which I think the Sox may be addressing with Sosa, or this gentleman may have been unaware of Josh Harrison's off the charts June so far. Finally, he's got an 853 OPS for June, which is 400 points higher than April, and almost 300 points higher than May.
Wow.
But he said the Sox need to get a real second baseman out on the field. Thanks for that news flash. Yeah, thanks for that news flash. I don't think you're saying anything that anyone didn't already think. The next two I find to be outrageous. He believes that right now we should trade Johnny Cueto to get the most we can from him. And I'm like, well, who's going to pitch in his spot?
You should have you should have had your tape recorder or something out. Interviewed this guy. This guy's full of radical ideas.
So we're going to take, arguably, besides Dylan, he's really, if you're looking at the top 3, he's 3 on the list right now, as Lance Lynn's slowly working his way up that list, coming back from injury. But if I had a 1, 2, and 3, it'd go Cease, Kopech, Cueto in my mind right now, and then Lynn and Giolito. Sure. But we want to trade that. And you know why we're going to trade that? Because what the White Sox, even though they invested in the bullpen, they should look to trade for bullpen versus starting help, which I think I kind of agree with that. But it's because everyone has good starting pitching in MLB. And I thought you would enjoy that one, because I'm pretty sure you have a few teams on our other podcast in the hole that do not have very good starting pitching in Major League Baseball. But his belief is that all the teams have very good starting pitching and everyone just needs bullpen help. And I thought that was an interesting analysis on Major League Baseball, that everyone just has great starters 1 through 5, and that's taken care of. It's just bullpen help that everyone needs, which I think everyone does kind of need bullpen help, which you can hear us talk about that on last week's episode in the hole, how the Cubs have some high trade value pieces out there, including some specific bullpen help they can provide people. But
for all you Sox fans out there, there's some good cross promotion of our 2 podcasts.
Yes,
for all you Sox fans out there that want to hear about the Cubs bullpen. Or check out In the Hole.
Hear us make fun of the Cubs too. You guys can enjoy that part of it.
Plenty of that.
But yeah, so Box Seat Manager was kind of Box Seat General Manager this week. That's a wrap on that one.
It's a good thing Rick Hahn was not in earshot, at least.
Yes, it's good that Rick Hahn was not in earshot. And speaking of Rick Hahn, what a perfect setup, Smitty. How about we get into a little Wrath of Hahn as I don't even know what to say at this point.
Wrath of Hahn, we talked about the origins of Wrath of Hahn. We're from 2016, where one of the weirdest, worst years in White Sox history. So many bizarre things were happening. I coined the term Wrath of Hahn as a hashtag because I thought it sounded cool, but to kind of describe everything that Rick Hahn had put his hands on had somehow turned to shit. And he was, never had a season above 500 at that point, but now that has turned around a bit. But this season, the injuries are mounting to an alarming state. It's happening across Major League Baseball, but the impact players that you are having injury issues with is astounding. So I think it's got to be there's something remarkable in a horrible way for what's happening to the White Sox right now. So poking fun at Rick Hahn being responsible for all this is one way that we can frame it, but certainly not his fault. But I mean, yesterday alone, you had 3 players go out with injury. You had Danny Mendick was the most serious with the collision with one of your Adams. I can't keep track of how many Adams you've had on your squad over the years, but
Heasley.
Yes.
Or Hesley or Heasley. Yeah.
I have not seen the diagnosis, but it looked like a serious knee injury for Mendick, who's been a fantastic replacement for TA since he was out for 3 weeks. Have you seen an update?
And no, I haven't seen an update. I looked this morning. There wasn't an update. We'll get all that, I'm sure, with the official White Sox announcement of purchasing the contract of Sosa and all the moves they'll be making today. But that is almost a La Russa Palooza type of thing too, in the fact that the White Sox fielding not good. Call the freaking ball so that doesn't happen. And even if you call the ball and the ball falls, fine.
Yeah, at least you didn't blow out your teammate's knee.
Yeah, you didn't blow out your teammate's knee. So you had that, which is, again, to me, that's poor coaching and managing, like that. They can't do a simple task. You had Adam Engel leave with a leg injury. I heard
the dreaded word hamstring that has come up more often than any other injury.
You had Luis Robert, and so does Jose Abreu, just to add to this list. They have general leg soreness.
That's what I had written down here, which is a little disturbing what that means.
It seems to be a White Sox thing, a
Sox type thing, so to speak.
Lewis, in addition, La Russa didn't necessarily think Robert was going to miss any playing time, so we'll see.
Well, he wasn't running out like an easy double yesterday, which caught Steve Stone's ire. Maybe an injury would help explain that, but Stone was pissed about that. Why he wasn't standing in second on that one play yesterday afternoon. The other hamstring issue I have written down is Moncada just went on IL with another hamstring issue. So
that was kind of retraded. We got Timmy back and sent Moncada to the IL just as he was starting to hit. So that's not good news. The only good news, the only thing is Berger has done a very admirable job. In fact, he's hitting way better than Moncada. The defense is the biggest issue for Berger, and it'll be interesting to see where they slot Lennon Sosa in. Will he even play tonight? Tony has a way of having someone come up and then not even utilize him. But well, we'll see. We'll see what happens there. And I had mentioned Gavin Sheets being a late scratch yesterday with no news of any type of injury. So is he returning too? Are we going to see basically an announcement of Mendick and Engel both go on the IL and Sheets and Sosa get called up? I don't know.
That's probably happening as we're recording this or thereafter.
The White Sox, normally that news comes out around 3:00 Central Standard Time. So not sure why in particular, but that's usually around the time the news officially breaks on Twitter accounts from
Right
White
after
Sox.
TLR's nap, probably.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he wakes up, Sleepy McGee over there. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of just expected at this point, almost like you just kind of watch a game and wait to see who's going to leave it with an injury or get injured. It's a disturbing trend. It was a trend that was disturbing enough for them to switch training, kind of reinvent their training staff, but that doesn't seem to help. Maybe it's because it was just people who came from internally in the organization. Maybe the training needs to move outside of the organization and bring in.
Well, you fired your head trainer of.
Yeah.
Well, that was 2020, so it's a whole new regime in there at this point. So I don't know,
but they all are internal promotions and stuff like that. They weren't from the outside, so that's where, like, you know.
But correct me if I'm wrong. Like, I felt for, you know, at least the Don Cooper era, I felt like, well, specifically your pitchers never got hurt. Maybe that's still happening. I felt it was almost uncanny, like how few injuries the White Sox suffered.
Yeah, I mean,
it seemed like for a decade and a half almost, and now, or maybe this is just the market correcting in ways that, you know, you had fewer injuries for a while, and it's now just all piling up in 2022. But it is bizarre.
No, it's questionable that it's all happened after Herb Schneider retired. I mean, he was the White Sox trainer forever, and the White Sox did. I mean, they were very limited in injuries. So, I mean, they also have different types of players now, though, too.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like, if you look at the size of like Lewis Robert and Yoan Makata, and they're like big. They have big upper bodies, and that's a lot of muscle. You know, that's a lot of weight, and it's
Robert is so big and strong. He can pull his tendons apart. It seems like.
Yeah, right. It's
like we talked about that last year, even so.
So I think some of that is in coaching, though, too. Like, you know, you got to teach these guys how to. It sounds so simple, but like just run and get to balls and do things correctly. I mean, I don't know.
I feel like so many of your injuries have happened running to first base. I mean, so many.
I know, it's crazy,
and that's happening across the league. But it's almost like you got to tell everyone, stop hustling. We don't need to leg out every infield hit. If you're going to be gone, honestly, for 3 weeks because of it or more, it might be worth just not getting thrown out, or getting thrown out by half a step more often. You know, you said, your other injuries keep happening in the outfield. I mean, not that it's an abundance of collisions, but it seems like you mentioned earlier, it's avoidable with proper coaching.
Yeah, I mean, how does someone who's played baseball their entire life know not to call for the ball, and or if you hear the ball being called for, to back off?
Well, I think that's what's happening. It's not heard. I mean, it's not like it's always easy to hear in a major league stadium. So I wonder if that's a mitigating factor. You've also had so many different players, combinations of players that might not be used to each other, like a shortstop not used to being playing with the same left fielder. You know, there might be some things that you get used to, and who gets this ball and who doesn't. And I think maybe the shuffling of your lineup maybe has mitigated that. I mean, not that I'm blaming TLR for that, but you've had so many different players playing different positions. Maybe there's just not the chemistry that you'd have if you had similar players. So I don't know. There's so many questions about that. That's why I just kind of put it all under the nebulous title, Wrath of Han.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the greatest coincidences in baseball, just like the 83 and the 83 team and this team still running side by side, even going into this week. So, but I'm not even going to get into that. No. Before we get into the tweet bag, I think we would be remiss if we just didn't talk a little bit about the Sunday Night Baseball broadcast on ESPN.
White Sox at Houston.
White Sox at Houston. ESPN gets the broadcast, and we we tend to make fun of national broadcasts a little bit on this show. And, Smitty brought up a great point. I don't know if it was earlier this season or last season. We get a little bit heavy on those guys because we're used to our local broadcasts who are really inundated with the team. But we've made fun with their lack of knowledge on the team, but they're trying to compress all that information in a week's time. But
Matt Spiegel from Parkins and Spiegel on 6-7 Score, he's got a term for it. He calls it out of town stupid, which I think is a perfect way to describe it. It's like, we're here, we watch it every day, so we just are going to know more than somebody that parachutes in that has to cover all 30 teams. And we're just going to have a deeper knowledge base, and they're going to do their best. But we ran into some issues with the Sunday night ESPN Sunday night crew.
Yeah, and this one isn't so much about that. It's more about how one thing that should be noted about home runs sometimes in Houston, it's sort of plays like a Yankee Stadium in left field where a fly ball can leave the field. And JJ, how do you say this guy's name? Majevic?
I call it Manischewitz, but I don't think that's
Manischewitz. Right. That was who called him Manischewitz was Stone the other night accidentally, and it was hilarious.
I think that's the best way to pronounce it.
Yeah, so he hits basically they did talk about it in the broadcast. What would have been an out in every other stadium, even Yankee Stadium. So a fly ball goes out for his first home run. And
was that his first hit of his career too?
Was it? I didn't. Maybe,
I could be wrong.
I didn't. But... Oh yeah, right. Maybe it was both.
It was a big deal. It's a milestone ball, first home run at least. So typically those players want that ball for longevity or for posterity in their trophy case when their careers are long done.
Yeah.
But there's always the mitigating factor of how to get that ball back from the fans.
And ESPN kind of let it consume the broadcast where Smitty, I think, termed it best. It was sort of like it turned into, was it pawnbrokers or you were calling it? Or Pawn Stars? Or
ESPN Sunday Night Baseball turned into an episode of Pawn Stars where they were talking about the negotiations, what you should be able to get for that ball, how valuable that ball is. Let me call in an expert here. What's this really worth?
Buster Olney had to go to talk with the kid who caught the ball and like walk us through the negotiations and what was happening.
Can we talk about that kid for a second? Like,
sure. Go ahead.
When I first
Bobby,
I don't have the great
Bobby from King of the Hill.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have the greatest vision, but I didn't realize I was a kid when I first saw him. I thought it was like a middle-aged man. It was an odd looking, I guess he's probably a 15, 16-year-old, but I'm making fun of the kid, but I had no idea it was a child at first. He had his younger brother with him, which would definitely look like a child at least, but I thought they were trying to negotiate with a 35-year-old man, which made some sense, I guess. But this is when it was revealed that he was in his teens and subsequent interviews. How many innings did this cover?
Just about every inning from the point it happened.
I think Buster made 2 trips into the stands to talk to him.
Yeah.
Not one, but 2.
And then, he had originally asked, I think he originally asked for a JV, a Verlander signed jersey. He was initially told no, but then around the 8th inning, we found out JV said yes. And so
I think it's because of the national TV coverage put pressure on the Astros and JV even to give the kid a fucking jersey. Let's do this.
So he ended up with 6 box seat tickets or something, 6 tickets to batting practice,
access to the field. This kid is a baller. He knows what he's doing when he's negotiating. He milked that for all it's worth. So
was it a signed Altuve ball?
I think he wanted that. They said they couldn't do that, and then he is getting that.
And the JV jersey.
The JV jersey is en route. I think he's getting a signed ball from JJ Manischewitz. Hopefully his last name is spelled correctly or pronounced correctly. This kid came up on loot for sure. But I think the only reason that happened was because Buster Olney and the rest of ESPN just browbeat the Astros into bowing to his will.
I mean, between that on the Sunday night broadcast and then when they have to take up like almost the entire half inning with visits from the manager, and you're not even really the ball games in a tiny little screen. I mean, it's like, I get you're trying to like set your broadcast, since it's a national broadcast, apart and give the general baseball audience education on these two teams who you don't see all the time if you're not in Chicago and Houston. I understand all that, but a lot of that stuff just takes away from the baseball game.
Yeah.
And there's some exciting stuff that happens sometimes.
I like that in small doses, but when you're missing key plays, when it's not even mentioned what's happening on the field for 5-10 minutes at a time, it's ridiculous. You're right. They're trying to do something different, trying to make it a big show, for the national broadcast, but it really detracts from the game eventually. Like that the kid getting all sorts of loot from the Astros is a fun story, but we could talk about that after the game. I certainly don't need 3 innings of in-depth coverage of that. So I think they're desperate to find different ways to entertain, and it just gets way too overboard. I watch baseball because I enjoy baseball, not the ancillary stuff. I can take that stuff with a smaller serving of that, I guess, is what I'm looking for.
Yeah, exactly. One interesting stat. You probably saw this, that La Russa and Baker, they brought this up. I didn't know this. They have played like 500 against each other over their entire career.
Really?
And the game, going into that game, it was 105 and 105 versus each other.
Wow, I missed that.
So La Russa left 105 and 106, and Baker now is 106 and 105. But that I thought was it was, to me, that was fascinating that they had played each other that close to the bone and obviously know each other very well.
Well, there's books written about it. I mean, 3 Nights in August.
3 Nights in August.
Back when both are in the NL Central, but their rivalry goes back, 20, a lot longer than that. They actually played on the same team. I believe Tony actually managed Dusty at the end of his playing career, which is hard to believe.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
There's been a lot of acrimony between the two over time, but that's another thing I did learn. I forget if it was actually on the ESPN broadcast or if I've heard it on podcasts subsequently, but they've not been friends. They've been really pretty much enemies for the better part of 3 decades, but apparently they've buried the hatchet in a very unusual way, through different means. Tony's tried to reach out a little bit in their older age. They don't want to have the animosity towards each other. I think they respect each other. They were kind of, the 2 oldest managers in baseball. So I think there's some camaraderie there where they need each other a little bit for a support group in some ways.
That's true.
The way that the story I heard that where they finally buried the hatchet recently was at the funeral of all things, the funeral of Bob Welsh, a co-teammate of theirs. But the weirdest part of that is they actually met in the men's bathroom at the urinals. So there was a meeting of minds. Hopefully that's it. And at the urinals,
that's some of where the best deals are done.
Yeah. So I'm just picturing this conversation where this 30 years of animosity is buried at a pair of urinals between 2 elderly men. I'm wondering if they washed their hands before they shook.
Crossing the streams is bad.
Did they cross the streams? There's so many questions of that should remain unanswered.
I don't want to know about the Dusty and La Russa sword fight. I don't need.
But apparently, after that chance encounter at a funeral urinal, they are now best of friends. So it's a nice story. It's an odd story, I guess. It's perfect for Major League analysts to talk about, I guess.
The funeral urinal. Urinal. Speaking of urinals, this is completely unrelated to this podcast, but since you brought it up, and we do have a beer sponsor, at a sports bar here where I was watching the Sox game the other night. I'm here in Kansas, in Wichita, exactly. Their urinals are made out of Lagunitas kegs, which is one of the coolest things I've ever seen.
Wow. You got to get a photo of that. We'll post it.
I love urinal photos, so I'll send you another one.
You are known for your urinal photography skills, so yeah,
So
put that on the wall.
On that note, I think we should move into our
mercifully
final segment, the tweet bag. Should we call this like the Twitter fair poll question, since you and I like to call
we got to workshop this. Tweet bag is funny. Tweet sack I was thinking of, but yeah, it's coming to be your Twitter polls is what we're talking about each week, which are fantastic. And
yeah,
totally appreciate everyone's participation in these. The participation rate started strong. It's getting stronger. So thank you for following at Sox Type Thing on Twitter. So yeah, we'll work on it. We'll work on a new name. Maybe I'll come up with some intro sounds for that as well. But
yeah, I feel the tweet bag works more when we're discussing specific things that were said on Twitter.
Well, and that's
and stuff like that.
Literally, we called it Sox Type Thing, and now it was we just made the whole podcast Sox Type Thing. So we're struggling to recapture what this segment should be called. But what was your Twitter poll this week?
Now, after you depressed me last week, I felt it deserved a question. Now that we know that Tony La Russa has a 3-year deal, which was just to give some commentary to that, was kind of ambiguous. No one really knew. La Russa never said. He was always like, well, I'll, just manage until I don't want to anymore. They don't want me here anymore. So we now know it's a 3-year deal.
Yeah, that information just sort of leaked out. It wasn't like an official press conference or anything like that. It just kind of is now common knowledge that it is a 3-year deal, which frames the whole Tony La Russa regime in a different light, knowing it's not open-ended. We knew it wasn't completely open-ended because the guy's reaching the end of his life, in a crass way to put it, but he can't manage forever. So, but now that we know there is a 3-year deal in which he is 2 years in, there's some, you can extrapolate from there what might happen.
So the question comes out, do you think he will finish his contract if the White Sox miss the postseason this year? And you had two options. Yes, he's Jerry's guy, or no, Han gets his way, because, of course, we've always theorized here that, unfortunately for Rick Hahn, he didn't have much say in the managerial hire.
Yeah, those are our opinions, but what did Twitter have to say?
Well, another even more of a landslide victory is a lot of realists out there. 67% believe he will finish his contract with the White Sox no matter what, and 33% think there's no way. 33% think that he could get fired if he misses the postseason. I'm in the 67% after hearing that news, that there is no way that Jerry will fire him again. However, I believe,
considering that is the greatest regret in his life that is nearing its end as well. So I mean, he can't have that happen twice on his conscience. So,
but you think with his life nearing end, his days are probably numbered here since he's in his 80s, that he'd want to win another World Series, which
another
is
good
what
point.
He is trying to do. And if, maybe you made a mistake, maybe hiring someone who's nearly your age is not a good idea to be a baseball manager right now.
So your Twitter poll question really is, what does Jerry value more, a White Sox world championship or his relationship with Tony La Russa?
That is maybe next week's question.
Well, that's the same question essentially. So it's that's what it is. That's what it comes down to. And I think he values his relationship with Tony La Russa. I mean, I think we're seeing that as La Russa Palooza carries on. At what point does it get to a ridiculous level that Jerry has to finally realize he made a huge mistake? And it might not happen. It might be when that 3-year contract runs out.
Well, whether it happens or doesn't happen, we know that most people out there feel that La Russa should be fired. So I think now is a perfect time for Smitty to talk about a wonderful T-shirt
that's right.
he has created.
Yeah, we just released the Fire Tony T-shirt. Very creative. Fire Tony.
It looks cool though.
Thanks. But yeah, that came out. I just posted that this morning. That's on our shop at aesthetics.store. You can find links to it from soxtypething.com, as well as MajorLeagueAholes.com. Yeah, I figure give the people their voice. We feel like Jerry does whatever the fuck he wants. Well, you can tell him what you think he should be doing in a obvious way on a big ass T-shirt, big ass graphic on a T-shirt. Bold letters, fire Tony. Let him know what you think. I think that's a growing sentiment. I haven't seen a whole lot of those T-shirts out there yet. I'm sure we're not the only ones, but go ahead and support this growing podcast as you already have. If you want to help us out with a little bit of coinage, appreciate that as well. And at the same time, you can tell Jerry exactly how you feel. Maybe it'll create some action. Maybe if enough people wear Sox Type Thing Fire Tony shirts, the pressure will become too great on Rick Hahn and Jerry Reinsdorf. They will have to make a move sooner than later.
My next move is to try to get a boycott or something out in front of White Sox Park with Fire Tony signs if things don't change within the next few weeks.
Yeah.
It's something's gotta change. Especially with all these interdivision games coming up. It's like 7 against Minnesota in the upcoming weeks. You gotta win 5 of those,
I say, so obviously me as a Tigers fan wearing all my Tiger gear right now, I say don't change anything. Let's keep this up. Let's keep the circus rolling. Mainly because it's so entertaining it's entertaining for Sox fans, but not the same way it is for everybody else. So, but it gives us plenty of content. What's that?
I say, even if the White Sox start winning, trust me, there'll be entertainment still. There is a large contingent that 93 wins last year were in spite of La Russa, just because of how much talent that team has. And there was a lot of questionable things that happened in April and May, even though they had winning records in both those months. So, Smitty, I think winning or losing, you're going to continue while Tony La Russa is manager of the White Sox to get 100% entertainment out of this team.
Yeah, I will be entertained one way or the other, but you know which way I'm leaning towards. So.
I know which way you're leaning, so I think that is a wrap for this week's episode.
That is it for episode 3 of Sox Type Thing. You can catch Sox Type Thing at Twitter at soxtypething.com or at Sox Type Thing. You can also find it at soxtypething.com. We are wrapping this episode up so we can record our 107th episode of Major League A-Holes in the Hole. You can find that at Major League A-Holes on Twitter and at majorleagueaholes.com. And you can find all those podcasts anywhere you'd like to find a podcast. So with that,
this podcast is over.
Peace.
Word Hole Media.